Everybody, and welcome to a very exciting, very special tandem interview edition. I think this is the first podcast that I've done for this show with more than one guest. So very, very exciting stuff. Delighted to be joined today by creative team Matt Bors and Ben Clarkson, perhaps the most creative combination of a Matt and Ben that you can find in the world of storytelling is what I'm going to say there. You probably heard that joke like 10 billion times, I bet.
Yeah, we put the other Matt and Ben's to shame.
That's true. That's true. You're my personal favorite.
Well, that's good.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you.
the other Matt and Ben's they don't come on the show. So yeah. Also, Ben, we are somewhat dressed alike. It's as though we coordinated this. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
Matt, did you not get the email?
Yeah. About the yellow sweater or
Yeah,
the yellow.
you have to have like a citrus hoodie on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very it cleanses the palate. It cleanses the
Mhm.
palate. Yeah. So but I guess I should mention some of the things that are part of the publication credits, although I'm betting folks out there know. Matt, you worked on the Nib. You founded and edited the Nib. There's also an anthology out there, Be Gay, Do Comics. You also have We Should Improve Society Somewhat. And I agree with all of those messages that you're sending out into the world.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Ben, you've worked with Matt on Justice Warriors, and you also have some really interesting work in the how-to mode of how to do these things of comics, which is something that I need more of in my life. I really need to spend more time drawing as well.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
It's a lifelong practice drawing.
I try.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm getting back into it after a dry spell of not drawing as much as I used to because I quit political cartooning in 2021. I've been itching to draw more. So I was drawing last night, in fact. I came up with
Oh,
something interesting.
very nice. I need more Matt drawings in my life, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And why would you quit political drawing in 2021? What was happening in 20? Oh my goodness. And what's happening that now that could inspire you? So many questions. Yeah, it's an interesting political landscape out there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, short answer is I did it for 18 years, got pretty burned out on it at the end of the Trump era and the pandemic. I mean, it was just awful.
Yeah.
Every listeners may recall that time period. And
We're all trying to forget. There's
yeah,
just
I
not
just,
enough melatonin
you
in
know,
the world.
it's just you got a little strip. I felt like I was saying the same things over and over about Trump and mass shootings and every single issue. And I Justice Warriors is a bit of a continuation of, it's not political cartooning directly, but there's a lot of politics in it. So I'm channeling all my creative energy into Justice Warriors.
So and you could tell me if I'm completely off base with this, but when I read Justice Warriors, it's sort of like if Paul Verhoeven directed a version of The Fifth Element as like an animated sort of film. That's kind of my takeaway. I love that. I love all of those sort of interminglings. Am I way off with that? Is that
No,
accurate?
that's perfect. If that comes across, then we've done our job.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It comes across well, and I've enjoyed it. And so what brought the two of you together on this collaboration?
Internet harassment,
Yes.
basically. I just kept DMing Matt. So I've been working on Justice Warriors started as a concept for an animated series because I'm a filmmaker mostly. This is my first comic book. This is my first published thing. And I had been trying to get this thing made for a long time, and I was trying to get it off the ground by myself. And I loved Matt's work, and I just thought, hey, I'm going to bug this guy that I like on the internet about writing for this TV show so that somebody will see that Matt's name is attached to it and give me some money to make it. And I just kept DMing Matt on Twitter until he was like, let me take a look at this. And then he loved it. So Matt, you can correct the story if you like.
No, that's fairly accurate. I looked at I don't know what you call, basically a trailer for Justice Warriors that Ben had made,
Mhm.
animated, and was like, oh yeah, this is absolutely something I'd write for. And if it didn't exist, I would create something kind of similar. I mean, me and Ben share similar influences in politics, and that's kind of how we hit it off. And once we started talking, I mean, we just had so many ideas for what we could do with Justice Warriors. And it quickly became apparent that, getting a well, Ben already knew this, but getting an animated film made is a lot harder than getting a comic book made. With me and Ben could make that ourselves. Of course, you want to get paid for it, for your time, because if you've seen the drawings that Ben does, they're very time intensive. So we put together a pitch, wrote up a 6-issue pitch, and sent it around to comic book companies, and had some interest from a couple places, and went with Ahoy, which is a pretty small but very good publisher of mostly humor and satire titles. And it's been great. And yeah.
Yeah. And I know they're like the big publishers, but I really enjoy what places like Ahoy do. And there's so many publishers out there that I imagine it's great to work with because the products, the things that come across seem so wonderful and creator driven.
Yeah, I mean, they're very supportive of what we're doing, not meddling.
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know um and we're trying to get multiple volumes of Justice Warriors out there. If that's not clear from the first volume, it's not just a one-off thing. We intend to create this sort of annually for as long as it's possible.
As long as people buy it.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Glad to hear there's more. There's a plan for more. And you were talking about the time intensive style that Ben brings to it. The first time, I think it's literally the first panel that's like Bubble City. I just looked at that panel for the longest time and I thought all of those details, all of those pieces that are there. So I imagine that is some carpal tunnel that develops as part of that.
Yeah, I have nightmares about carpal tunnel because that would really set me back if that ever developed. I have had some hand cramps from time to time, but I figure I'm immune to these status effects.
Oh yeah.
Just bounces off me. I'm sure I'll
That's
be able
right.
to keep doing this repetitive motion as I go. But also, like, drawing the book taught me a lot about how to draw a comic book. So I don't know if I would draw it exactly the same way
Mhm.
the next time because I come from fine art and illustration. So I just sort of, and I haven't really looked at that many comic books. So I figured that's just the level that was expected, was like really good drawings. And apparently, people have really responded to the art, which I'm really happy about. And I'm definitely looking forward to learning from the carpal tunnel, the pre-carpal tunnel effects that I had from drawing the last series.
I imagine there's a blog out there somewhere. I know you can buy those like little glove wrist things, but yeah, I imagine there are some self-care techniques.
Yeah,
Or
I think I'm just going to replace the arm
Yeah.
bionic.
yes,
That'll,
the Skywalker plan. I love
yeah,
it.
future proof my hand.
That's right. 900 years at least of drawing and illustrating. We hope. We hope. Love it. Yeah, yeah. So you might have already kind of touched on this, but I was going to ask about like why comics and what comics allow you to do. So you're talking about how going and trying to get a film made requires you have to talk to all kinds of people. You have
Yeah.
to find a place. You have to get producers. You have to do a budget. You have to navigate all of these things. And a lot of people that have come on the show have talked about how comics are kind of like you can do it yourself and you are the director and the script and all of those things and you're casting. Um, so it kind of sounds like that's part of the answer. Anything else that you want to tack onto that as far as what it was about comics that made it kind of the ideal medium?
Well, I'm just a comics creator. That's the medium that I work in. If I have a story, it's comics. I mean, I love other mediums like everyone else. I like film. I don't aspire to be a filmmaker. I would write for it, like Justice Warrior show in particular,
Mhm.
especially because the money is better. But like from a creative standpoint, I guess just like I was saying, you can actually get something made that looks as good as it can be without without anyone else's help as a cartoonist. You might not get paid for it. I mean, that's there's a lot of economic realities, but if you have something that you're passionate about, even if we didn't get a publishing deal for Justice Warriors, let's just say we worked on it in our spare time and it took 3 years to make, we could still get made. It could still get made. You can't do a film like that. I mean, you could, you sacrifice money and budget, and you can't make a film on a, I'll film for 15 minutes every night after my kids go to sleep. You can actually work on comics that way. So, you can make them and make them as good as they can be, and then they're finished and you can put them out in the world, and there's no one, you don't have to talk to guys in suits and get money for it. Well, you do have to a little bit, but they're usually not wearing suits.
Yes. Yeah.
Hoodies, citrus
Yeah.
hoodies. Yeah.
That's right. It's sort of the attire. It's
Yeah.
an unwritten rule. I was talking to somebody yesterday that writes in the Buffy verse, and she was talking about like the Buffy vampire slayer people. And I just pictured like a room that was dark and somewhere in like West Hollywood that was like 1,000-year-old people that were like, you can do this in Buffy. So yeah, there are definitely those power players and stakeholders that I'm sure you have to navigate.
I love the idea of like, what do you being a Buffy power player? It's like,
Right?
what do you do? I control the intellectual property rights for Buffy the vampire.
That's right. And there are those people out there that are like, that character would never do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. Interesting dynamics, I'm
Well,
sure.
that's what, we don't I know I know people who work in mainstream comics, and they get, you know, fandom, essentially fandom,
Mm.
who they care about the characters more than they care about the creators. That's what we hope to inspire eventually with multiple volumes of Justice Warriors. Like when we do something, we got to shake it up in the fifth volume, and then we do something crazy, and then fans are like, what?
Mhm.
Swamp Cop would never do
Mm.
that.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It's a betrayal of everything.
I hope that we can at least stay on mission with the type of satire and the type of storytelling we're doing, so that people never care too much about the fandom. Like that, for
Yeah.
me as an artist, to look at fandom is so strange, because I've never been. I guess I was like crazy into Star Wars when I was in high school, but at a certain point I was like, oh, I'm an adult. I care about the people who live near me rather than the color of Han Solo's pants.
Yes. Yes.
It's very strange to me, and I have a lot of questions about why it even happens. I guess it gives you a sense of control or ownership over this thing that you love. But no one's allowed to own Justice Warriors.
It's yours. It's yours. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think about I just appreciate a good story. And you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
satire. That was one of the things I was just going to make sure to ask about, which is, people look at comics, and so part of the message that I try to share on the show is they're very complex. They're very interesting works that do a variety of things, and some of them are not very complex. Some of them are. The other thing is science fiction and fantasy, which is always a go-to for me. Uh, I think sometimes people look at it and they go, "Oh, it's a swamp cop. Oh, there are goblins. Oh, whatever the character happens to be." I'm going, well, but there's commentary there. There's, the satire aspect. So, yeah, what are those ideas that you hope that people kind of notice, and what's the critique that you're hoping to offer along with the sheer entertainment of being in Bubble City?
Well, and I think that the surface aesthetic elements of the wacky cartoon characters are structurally part of the satire too. Like
Mhm,
you
mhm.
you you mentioned, like, why comics And I think that Justice Warriors has sort of adapted from an animated concept to comics really well, because there is this idea of like high genre to Justice Warriors, that it works as a genre comic. We sort of make fun of many of the archetypes of comic adventure stories and hero narratives within it. And then it's very light and very whimsical in how it uses its science fiction and fantasy elements. But underneath of that, those whimsical character designs and almost psychedelic aspects is a critique of society, is a critique of how we think about justice, how we think about rebellion against systems, our place within systems, how systems perpetuate themselves, violence and violence place in our world. Matt and I have talked about Justice Warriors as something we call a mega satire, that it's sort of a satire of everything we end up touching. There's not a lot that we treat with kid gloves in the book. And I think the surface elements are there to give you a little bit of comfort and a little bit of safety, that you can trust us, that we're having fun, that this is a fun book. This is not a dangerous book, while we pretty much tear everything apart. But not in a nihilistic way, not in a juvenile, like, oh man, screw their system, man. But
Right.
with a strong point of view that it is left in sort of a negative space in the book, so that the viewer isn't beaten over the head with a moral message. I think so much art today. There was this period in late Victorian era of the symbolists, and the symbolists basically believed it was an art movement that everything had to have like a clear moral message. All art had to have a clear message to it. And from the Victorian symbolists sprung Alfred Jarry and the pataphysicians. And this was a reactionary art movement that basically formalized absurdism and said, like, absurdity has to react against this moment of meaning that everybody's pushing for. And Alfred Jarry wrote this incredible play called Ubu Hua, Père Ubu, following Père Ubu, which is this ridiculous character. And it's basically a satire of Shakespeare, King Ubu. And it's basically the story of Macbeth and Hamlet sort of mashed together, but the villains win. And that for me was a major guiding force in how to write and how to create something to respond to this moment where we don't understand what a piece of art is unless it articulates clearly to us what its values are, what it is trying to teach us. And I wanted to create something when I was making Justice Warriors that gave the reader a compliment to their intelligence, that they can think and engage with this piece of work in a number of ways, and they can draw their own conclusions from it, while at the same time being an adult work that is a lot of fun. Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, this is why I like working with Ben, because his head is filled with stuff that's not just comic books. I mean, that was all well said. I guess I would just say that we're trying to do a lot of things with Justice Warriors. There's a lot of layers to it, and I think we're trying to merge low and high culture a lot. There's poop jokes, and there's a lot of politics. But I think that you can enjoy it as a kind of zany ultraviolet adventure story, and the politics aren't very hidden. I mean, I would say it's probably the most political book on the stands as far as like a monthly comics go, and that type of book. But it's also, like Ben said, it's not, I hope, not trying to hit you over the head in a way that is like telling you how to think or feel, because it is not really about identifying with, the protagonists are cops. I mean, it's not like the protagonists are just people who think the way that we think. and then turn to the camera and say, I'm the exact type of communist that you are. There's a little bit more to it than that. And so to the point where we weren't sure how it was going to be received, and then it's been received pretty well, so people get it.
And so one of my unofficial tests for how heavy a book is that very often in my life, because I teach and I do things, the space that I save for reading is usually right before bed for the reading that I want to do, because I read a lot for work. And so there are those books out there. I'm thinking about like John Lewis's March. I can't read that before I go to sleep. It's like way too heavy. I get emotional. It's a powerful book, but it's more of a noon kind of read, you know? Um, Justice Warriors, there are ideas there, there's fun there, and it's totally a book that fits in that space of it's fun enough that it'll just mess with my dreams a little bit, you know.
The 10 p.m. It's a 10 p.m. or
That's right. That's right. It's a 10 p.m.er. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, there was something else I was gonna mention there. That was oh yeah, yeah. I was thinking about like 80s and 90s sitcoms and how the didactic that you were talking about, Ben, and how, we've all been sort of through television and other media been acclimated to this idea that certain forms of storytelling in the last 10 minutes sort of wrap it up, or the last 5 minutes sort of wrap it up with this message like, oh, Deej, you shouldn't like vandalize other people's cars.
Yeah.
Oh, Dad, I'm sorry. That sort of thing.
yeah.
So I feel like because of things like that, there's this automatic sort of baked in reaction that's sort of like, oh, that's too simplified. It's too simplified. It's entertaining in a way. Nothing against Full House, although I wasn't that wild about the revival. Um, so it's it's simplified in a way and it's enjoyable in a way, but you don't want everything to do that. And I feel like
you can even I think in Justice Warriors in the text we do that. It's just that at the end the cops win. It's a classic police action movie narrative. I compare it to Michael Bay a lot. The cops win at the end, and they're sort of like, and there's even a speech about like what the meaning of the book was. But if you were really paying attention to the subtext of the book, you're like, oh no, but that's not the lesson I learned here.
Yeah.
And so a big influence on me is Marshall McLuhan and media theory. And McLuhan talks a lot about how media has an inherent meaning that can be either reinforced, or you have a point of tension and contradiction with a difference in the between the text and the medium. And there is this sort of lack of faith in the viewer or the reader nowadays that they can sort of put two and two together to figure out a third meaning in books or movies. Like people really want to be. There's this idea, at least in corporate art, I find that you need to let people know exactly what it means at all times. Right. Otherwise, I don't know. Like people might think for a minute, and
well, they might get upset. They might get upset with you, and then the television episode comment is interesting because I think we are trying to create something that has a vibe of sort of a lot of animated shows, adult comedy, even kids stuff too, is all about sort of perpetuating a status quo world, right? Like The Simpsons or Futurama or almost Cheers, whatever, anything that you could name, long running sitcom type show. And we do envision Justice Warriors being like that. But there's a reason, there's a story reason too, which is, it is about the system perpetuating itself in this world wherein there's a bubble city where, like, let's pick a percentage, 1% of the population lives and controls the wealth, and how difficult it is to change anything in this world. We didn't want there to just be easy answers, or people at the end being like, wow, we solved it. Great. But then it would have been hard to do a volume 2 after that too.
True. This is true. It also serves the purpose of the story, but then I'm also thinking, what kind of a world would it be if people lived in bubbles and only 1% of people controlled the wealth and there weren't easy answers? Like that's just
Yeah, we don't.
Unthinkable. Yeah.
It's
Right.
well, this is why we have fantasy and science fiction, is to explore worlds that could be, or we don't, what would it be like? We don't know.
And at the end, it always seems oddly familiar
Yeah.
in a way
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I also like to ask about sort of what's next, what's new, and what's happening. And so it sounds like there is a plan for an extended Justice Warriors. I'm not going to say multiverse because we've already talked about fandom and the problems of continuity that, and I'm going, continuity doesn't even exist anymore. So let's just be okay with a good story. So it sounds like there's more of that on the way and in development.
Absolutely. There is nothing's official yet, but we're not making a secret that we intend to make more of these, and I think there's going to be a second volume. We definitely have we have very concrete story ideas for many volumes of Justice Warriors.
Yeah, when I pitched it originally to Matt, I used the example of the TV novel The Wire. That every single series or issue would dig into something else. And I think this is a form that Matt really gets spontaneously too. It sort of clicked to me like that's what he was doing with the nib as well. That every issue has a theme. So there is an idea of theme and an overall aspect of society or some system that we are going to dig into differently in every series. This one was sort of inequality and the system of production and distribution of the economy leading to crises within a capitalist system. And the next one, we'll see. You'll have to pick it up. Call your local comic book store.
That's right. That's right.
Demand more. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. And the fandom begins.
Yeah.
Begins. People have already done fan art, which I'm, I do cool. Like, I curdle at the idea of being like a fan of things, but then there's this other part of me that's like, yes, love this thing that I've made. It's right. Like a mind virus that I came up with one day, and Matt's patient zero, basically.
Just cut to 10 years from now, and Ben is like, I think it's fine to sell Justice Warriors to Disney. I don't have any. Yeah,
I have a solid gold suit.
The casting, yes, the citrus has been replaced by gold. I mean, they're within the same family, right? Totally.
They're going to get the James Cameron AI bot to direct it.
Oh, that's right. Then I'm in. If it's Cameron, if it's Cameron bot.
Yeah, I mean, they've scanned his brain, and he sold the rights to it. He agreed to this. It's totally fine. That they get 100 years of James Cameron AI bot.
They put his body in a Terminator's body.
And
just let him loose in the editing bay.
There are 37 Avatar movies planned, and in between them, there's going to be a Justice Warriors.
That's right. Man. That's right. And we have Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. At least the AI deepfake versions that will be.
Well, they're voicing because they'll do the whatever, they'll record their voices and make a whatever fake.
Affleck is Swamp Cop for sure. Yeah.
Thinking so. Also, before we close, is that the coolest Norman Rockwell painting in the world behind you? I'm just noticing this kid with glasses on.
Oh yeah, that's a painting I did many years ago, 14 years ago. And it has a caption underneath of it that reads, "Blind from staring at the sun."
I see. I was thinking Norman Rockwell inspired cool art there.
Oh, I love Norman Rockwell. Like a major influence on me very early on. Learning how to paint like Norman Rockwell was very hard. And now I have to abandon all of that and try to learn how to draw like Atomo and Mobius. That's the new plan.
Yeah, do you do you, you know, bring it to the comics page. Comics are so open right now as far as form, but do watch for the carpal tunnel. I will say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you both so much. Did I miss anything on the interview that you want to make sure to put out into the world? Anything at all?
Uh, Hopefully there'll be some sort of Simon and Schuster link attached to this podcast where people can check out Justice Warriors,
Absolutely.
which would be great. It's always nice for independent creators to be able to shill their wares to
Yeah.
various audiences.
There will be a link. There will be a link. Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
By all means. Yeah. And so thank you so much, Matt Bors, Ben Clarkson, and everybody out there. Best wishes on enjoying some nice Justice Warriors, and can I say good book hunting? Is the joke getting
No, it's
good book hunting, everybody?
yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.